Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to Dr. Fateh and Dr. Siti Radatan Adawiyah. My name is Maizatul Jeehan Binti Mazeli. We present my final year project, which is potential Malaysia to implement a vacancy tax. My supervisor is Dr. Nur Hidayah. So we go for introduction first. Number of population in Malaysia was increased from year to the year. And in economy, we have studied human needs has 4 characteristics, which is first, food, second, clothes, third, shelter, and 4 is air, to still alive. So characteristic of shelter depends what the buyer wants for their house. Okay, first, the characteristic they want is conducive. Big or small depends how many members in their family. Types, if they don't like a building strata, they can choose a terrace house. And price is affordable or not affordable to buy. So the responsible to build this house is the developer. Okay, developer will supply the house. The issue is here. When the demand decrease, it will produce an oversupply of housing. Oversupply housing in Malaysia is a critical level right now. So, Housing and Local Government Minister YB Hajah Puan Zuraida Binti Kamaruddin has introduced a vacancy tax to overcome about oversupply housing in Malaysia. Okay, for problem statement, as we know, our world has faced a COVID-19, which has crippled many sectors, and the most affected for this pandemic is the real estate sector. From the statistic of NAPEC, since 2018 until 2020, the number of unsold property is 31,6061 units, which is a big numbers of unsold property or overhang property. Okay, Housing and Local Government Minister has introduced a vacancy tax to overcome this issue. As we know, vacancy tax was implemented from another country, which is Canada, Hong Kong, and United States. Okay, vacancy tax is a new tax introduced in Malaysia. Vacancy tax can help to overcome oversupply quantity housing in Malaysia, but the developer disagree to implement this tax because they worry the price of the house will drop. Okay, the big question is here. Does Malaysia have a potential to impose a vacancy tax? And what is the benefit and weakness impose a vacancy tax? Okay, the aim of study is to know that the potential Malaysia for implement the vacancy tax to decrease the number of oversupply housing in Malaysia. For the objective of this research, first they want to know to identify the advantages and disadvantages of vacancy tax. Second, to review the potential Malaysia to impose a vacancy tax. Okay, for the scope of study, as I said before, vacancy tax was first time introduced in Malaysia. So the selected area is the country of Malaysia. Next, for selected respondent, I choose from the Department on the Housing and Local Government, also developer. Okay, why I chose the Department of the Housing and Local Government? Because the Minister of the Housing Local Government has introduced this vacancy tax to Malaysia. And also why I choose developer, because developer is the one of the group that affected to this tax. Okay, significance of study. Okay, first to government, they can know the new method or alternative to overcome about overhang property or oversupply of housing. Second, they can know how to implement the tax in Malaysia, like another country, which is Canada, France, Hong Kong, and Australia. To a community, they can give a more knowledge about this vacancy tax that can reduce the unsold property. Okay, what is expected finding for the researcher? Okay, this study is expected to achieve the advantages and disadvantages vacancy tax on the other country. Next is the researcher can find the answer about the potential to implement a vacancy tax in Malaysia. So next is literature review. Okay, we go for a definition vacancy tax. Okay, in a theory, a vacancy tax is imposed upon any property that is left vacant or unsold for a certain amount of time. And for the another meaning of vacancy tax is vacancy tax, whereas any property that is left vacant and unsold for a certain time uh, is a charge of a penalty based on the percentage gross selling price. The highest of the selling price, the highest of the tax quantum. Okay, for the application of vacancy tax in another country. Okay, we go down first, which is Canada. Okay, for the Canada in August 2016, government of British Columbia has introduced the Vacancy Tax and Foreigner Buyer Tax Act. Okay, the vacancy tax was amended to enable the city of Vancouver to impose vacancy tax on a vacant residential properties. Okay, next we go to United Kingdom. Okay, since 2013 April, the United Kingdom chose to charge a vacant unit without an extra 50% of the council tax payment and the tax on housing property. Okay, next for the other country is Jerusalem down here. Okay, Jerusalem has implemented same like vacancy tax, but the name is Arnona. Is a double tax payment. Okay, for the properties that have been empty for the 6 months, more than 6 months. Okay, for the France. Okay, France is here. Okay, vacancy tax is called as tax sur les logements vacant or TLV, was introduced in 1999 in an urban unit. It's a substantial to disequilibrium between housing supply and demand. So the impact of vacancy tax to another country, which is we can see from the geographic data here. Okay, we can see the number of empty housing was decreased from year to the year from 2017 until 2019. Okay, this implementation of vacancy tax this year has reduced the number of vacant housing units by 25%, which is from the news of CBC 2020. Okay, so this is a positive impact that we can see from the Vancouver Declaration Vacancy and Geographic data. Okay, as I mentioned before, my research objective first is to identify advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so for advantages, to overcome overhang property. Okay, number two, developer can choose the right decision before do a development. Okay, third, developer can more focus to manage their project. Fourth, can be a maintenance cost. Fifth, stabilize real estate market. Okay, for disadvantages, okay, developers suffer losses. Okay, second, the price of a property will be decreased and more cheap. Third, the transaction process will be slow. Okay, fourth, housing affordability and availability in the country. Fifth, financial burden to a developer. Okay, for the methodology, introduction, to review the potential measure to impose a vacancy tax. Second, the objective of study, first, to identify the advantages and disadvantages of vacancy tax. Number two, to review the potential measure to impose a vacancy tax. For the literature review, I get from the journal, book, article, newspaper, and thesis. Okay, for the data collection, what I want to get from the data collection, for the primary data, how I will use the interview. Okay, for the secondary data, I will use book, journal, thesis, article, and newspaper. For the data analysis, the method that I use to collect the data is using a qualitative method, which is I will go to interview a respondent. Okay, lastly, I will do a suggestion and conclusion about the data that I received from the interview. Okay, we go for the conclusion. Okay, vacancy tag is the one alternative that the new alternative to control our overhand property. The tax is already applied in another country. The Housing and Local Government Minister has introduced this tax to overcome overhand property in Malaysia. The tax is applied another country like Canada, Vancouver, to control their housing and the market of the city. There is pro and cons when we apply this tax to our country. There is 5 steps to collect the data to achieve objective of study. Okay, the method that used is a qualitative method. For data collection, the researcher can analyze the data to get the answer for the problem statement. Okay, this is my references to find my data for achieve my objective number 1, which is to identify advantages and disadvantages advantages vacancy tax. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.